I am a 37 years old male. I have a 13Y.0 son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16Y.0 daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why, and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after a tantrum. Early this morning she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt, to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore. My husband Nick was married to his first wife Vanessa for 5 years, and they had 2 amazing kids, Luke and Lila. Sadly, Vanessa died in an accident 11 years ago when the kids were very young. I started dating Nick 8 years ago, and we started off very slowly for obvious reasons. Nick has always been a little more distant than anyone I'd ever been with. But he and the kids lost Vanessa so young that I understood it. After 3 years of dating, Nick asked me to marry him and I moved in. I've always had a really great relationship with Luke and Lila, and they were happy for me to marry their dad. I had wanted an actual wedding, nothing big. But Nick really didn't want one, so we got married at the courthouse with just Luke and Lila present. We had a really fast engagement, but it worked for all of us. I have loved being Luke and Lila's stepmom and officially adopted them after I found out I was pregnant with our son, Casey. The kids have been so great with Casey and help out so much. Nick was wonderful during the pregnancy and had always been a really loving dad and husband. But Nick has been pulling away a lot the last few months. He's been even more distant than usual and working late nights and going away with friends almost every weekend. I've tried talking to him, but he's been impatient with both me and the kids. I found out I was pregnant in June and am now 21 weeks pregnant with a girl. The kids are excited to have a little sister, but Nick just seems so indifferent to everything and everyone. He's been missing soccer games, Lila's birthday, doctor's appointments, etc. Casey is too young to notice, but Luke and Lila are so hurt by their dad's absence. These kids are so good and they lost their mom so young, and I'm infuriated that Nick is ignoring the kids like this. Last week, I finally sat Nick down and told him that he needs to stop disappearing and be more present in our lives. We're going to have another child soon, and before we know it, Luke and Lila will be grown up and going to college. After an hour of arguing, he screamed at me that he wished Vanessa was still alive and that I had switched places with her and died instead. He also threw in some awful comments that I need to stop pretending I'm Luke and Lila's real Mom, and that I'm only half the mom Vanessa was. The final straw was him saying that he never even wanted any kids with me, but did it so I'd keep busy and leave him alone. I'm so beyond hurt right now. I know I'm just his second choice. But I've always tried to honor Vanessa and tell Luke and Lila how lucky they were to have her as their mom. I love all of our kids more than anything, and I'm just so heartbroken. Nick barely pays attention to Casey now and doesn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. He somewhat apologized this weekend and took all 3 kids to lunch, but he won't even look me in the eye. He seems like he wants to talk, but he doesn't say anything, and I'm too upset to even be near him. I'm not sure where to go from here. Honestly, I can't even be around Nick right now, and if there weren't any kids involved, I'd leave and never look back. I'm not sure if he's cheating or the thought of a 4th child is stressing him out. But I'm devastated and not sure how or why I should save this marriage, besides doing it for the kids. My wife, Irene, is very fit. She likes working out and has a proper exercise regime, etc. She believes that if she feels good, she looks good, and she feels good working out, so who am I to stop her? My brother, Will, spent the latter half of last year going through a messy divorce and now needs a place to stay. Though my brother and I aren't very close, I figured he would only stay with us for a couple weeks until he got back on his feet. Will is a typical gym rat. He's always on a very strict diet, always working out and bragging about his gains. I've worked out with him a few times and he's a little obnoxious. He's always mad at you if you don't work at his pace and is always trying to correct your form. He's a pretty fit and muscular guy, but I don't like to exercise with him. Will has been pushing Irene to work out with him because, according to him, she won't be able to keep up with him. Irene mostly just shrugs him off with a laugh and tells him she would love to work out with him. Irene works out in the mornings, 3 times a week, and then does a run in the evening. But she's been busy this past week and hasn't been able to stick to her usual schedule. Will thinks that she's making excuses because she doesn't want to be embarrassed by him. Again, Irene just laughs him off. About 2 days ago, Irene and Will went on an early morning run. I didn't go with them, but the first thing I heard when Will entered the house was, "The only reason I couldn't keep up with you, Irene, is because you were sweating too much." I found this extremely comical, and kinda just laughed him off. Irene rolled her eyes and went to take a shower, so I thought that the conversation would die. However, Will just kept bringing up my wife's sweat. My wife went to work and he told her to make sure she doesn't sweat through her clothes, or when she called me in the middle of day. He yelled, "Tell the sweaty." I said hi. Of course, the comment aggravated me and I told him to knock it off and stop acting like a child. I thought that was the end of it, but he just kept going. By the end of the day, I was tired of his comments, but Irene seemed rather unfazed by them. When she served him food, he made a comment about her sweating into the food. At this point, I was at my wit's end and I told him to stop acting like a sore, slow, referring to his running pace, loser, and eat his food. Will, of course, got angry and said the only reason he was going slower than usual was because he was distracted by my wife's unhygienic sweat. Irene looked a bit offended by this, and I told Will that I would kick him out if he made another comment like that. He's been super pissed ever since. I jokingly told this story to a mutual friend and they agreed with Will. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. I didn't expect this amount of responses. I've decided to kick him out. He will be staying at a nearby hotel now. I'm at the gym today and I'm walking towards an empty squat rack. 10 feet in front of, and 1 foot to the right of my rack is another rack that a girl Belinda is doing squats on. While walking up I briefly noticed that her leggings are see-through, and when she bends down in her squats you can easily tell she's also not wearing underwear. That's not my business, that's her choice. But it made me uncomfortable to take a rack that was kinda behind her. I had been waiting my entire gym session for one of these racks to open up, and this was my last lift before leaving. So I went ahead and took it. I went through my workout as normal. After every set I check my phone for 5 to 20 seconds. I track every single set for every single lift in a spreadsheet to note how much I lifted and for how many reps. Sometimes I need to remind myself what I did last week to make sure I'm progressing. Sometimes I'm just checking the time. Sometimes I'm changing the song on my Spotify. Tonight specifically, there was a very important basketball game being played, so I wanted to keep up with the score. So I used my phone a lot at the gym. I finished my third set when Belinda turns around and walks up to me, with her phone up yelling, "What the are you doing?" Perv stop pictures of me. I'm caught completely off guard, but I explain that I'm just taking notes on what I'm lifting. That I'm not paying attention to her at all. She's being extra loud so other people are looking at me, plus she's recording me, and she demands I go through my pics / vids to show her what I was recording, and I delete the ones I took of her. I try to again explain I didn't record anything of her at all. She's yelling that if I have nothing to hide I should have no problem showing her, so I insist on going to gym management. Once at the front we both explain our stories. She's still recording. The normal gym attendee asks me if I'm willing to show her, a neutral third party, my pics / vids. She also says if I have nothing to hide it's not a big deal and we can squash it right now. I refuse. I have my own uncensored pics in there plus those of my GF. I'm not gonna let anyone force me to show them for some bullshit. I do show her my spreadsheet which shows it's been revised over 15 times in the past 50 minutes. So that proves what I was using my phone for. That was received well, but they still expected me to prove my innocence. I told them they need to review the cameras. Apparently only the manager has access to them, so I was told he'd call me before the end of the night, in about an hour. My GF tells me I should have just let them look at my phone because she doesn't mind and it would have cleared this all up. But I mind. I get that someone wouldn't want someone taking pics of them. But violating my privacy to prove I wasn't taking pics of you crosses a line for me. Just talked to the manager. He checked the footage. He couldn't see what was on my screen in the footage. But he said it looks like I had my phone pointed towards the ground right in front of me the whole time. In his opinion, not high enough to even take a pic of her, and never angled in her direction. Apparently I was gonna get banned from the gym if the cameras didn't absolve me. And also I'm not the first person that has been accused by Brenda, but she legit had a creeper before.